Hey everybody, it's Miss Klein. We're going to move on with the next mini lesson today. I want to remind you, watch this video in its entirety. This will show you where to fill in your notes. So you need to first go to the Google Classroom for today and open up the Literary Elements notes. When you open it up, it will look like this. It's your copy to type your answers. I'll go through the lesson with you, slide by slide, and I'll stop and have you fill in your answers. I noticed the other day a lot of you pulled up your notes, but then you started trying to Google the answers, and that's going to be nearly impossible for some of these. So if you follow along in the video, you'll be fine. So we're going to look today at character types and characterization. Those things are very important when you are reading. So some of these, they should be, I would imagine, a review, but I want to make sure that you remember. So the first one's a protagonist. The protagonist are the main characters. Usually the conflict is centered around them. So go into your notes, and right here where it says main character, I want you to type, well, I've already typed that for you, so hold on a minute. I want you to type the word protagonist right here. I typed the definition for you, and I want you just to type the word. So protagonist. Alrighty, now we're going to look at the next one, which is the antagonist. The antagonist is a main character a lot of times, and it's a character who creates conflict or who makes the conflict even worse. So these are some characters who are antagonists. They cause problems. So go in your notes and type right here, antagonist. Okay. I can't read that. Flat character. Think of a piece of paper that's flat. If it's on a table, you only see one side of it. A flat character is a secondary character, so they're not a main character. You only know one or two things about that character, and that character does not change throughout the story. So it's flat. You just know a little bit about it. So go in your notes, right here where it says secondary character, only know one or two traits, and I want you to type flat character. And you can pause this video if I'm going too fast. The next kind is round character. These are the main characters in a story. We know lots about them. We know what they're thinking, what they're feeling. These characters do change in a story, and they're like real people. So go back into your notes. For main characters, know many traits, I want you to type round character. Next, dynamic characters. These are characters who change or grow, or they learn some kind of a lesson in the story. The protagonist is a dynamic character. From the beginning of the story to the end, that character will have changed or learned a lesson. So go in your notes, right here, where it says the knows many traits, they change, you're going to type dynamic character. So the opposite would be a static character. A static character does not change. They stay the same through the whole story. So maybe they are evil in the beginning of the story. They're still evil at the end. So right here where it says the main character who, does not change is static. I think these are backwards. Anyway, make sure this one where it says character that does not change is static. And the main character who does change is dynamic. So static here, dynamic here. So what's our essential question for today? How does an author create a character? That's called characterization. So let's go back in, and right here I want you to type, how does an author create a character? How does an author create a character? You will type that right here in our essential question. And like I said, that is called characterization. So we're going to take a look at a little acronym called STEAL, S-T-E-A-L. The S stands for what the character says. So in your notes, go back and type the word says. Says starts with an S. The T stands for what the character thinks. Go in your notes and type what the character thinks. The E is what effect did the character have on others. So the effect character has on others. The A, how the character acts. So you'll type acts. And the L, how the character looks. How the character looks. So this is how authors create a character. They include these different things when they're describing the character, when they're showing the character. Now, characterization can be direct or indirect. So let's see what your notes. Okay, we're going to figure out which one's direct and which one's indirect. Direct characterization is when a narrator or character describes another character directly. They come out and say, Bobby is mean, so you know it. So when a narrator or character describes another character directly, you're going to type direct right there, direct. But a lot of times authors want you to figure out what the character's like. That is called indirect characterization. That's when a character traits are revealed through a character's behavior. So if Bobby is throwing rocks at the little girl when she gets off the bus, or Bobby's mean to his sister, his behavior is showing us that he's mean. So that's indirect characterization. So you would type indirect right here. You have to figure it out. And usually authors in the story will put direct and indirect both. They'll tell you what a character's like a lot of times, but they also show you what that character is like. So let's take a look at an example. You have your notes filled in now, but let's look at an example of a character's thoughts. Okay, this is from the story 11 that we read earlier. I'm 11 today. I'm 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. But I wish I was 102. I wish I was anything but 11, because I want today to be far away already, far away like a runaway balloon, like a tiny O in the sky, so tiny, tiny, you have to close your eyes to see it. Okay, so we're hearing her thoughts. Ask yourself, was Rachel a protagonist or an antagonist? That should say or right there. I think she's a protagonist. She's the main character in the story. She's not causing problems for anyone. Okay, is she dynamic? Or is she static? Does she change a whole lot in the story? Or does she pretty much stay the same throughout the whole story? Well, think about what you know from your notes about dynamic and static. And we said, whoops, up here, that a dynamic character changes or grows is the protagonist. So we know she's a protagonist, so we know she's going to be a dynamic character. She's going to learn something. Okay, and then round or flat. We knew a good bit about Rachel. We knew her thoughts, her feelings. We saw how she acted. So she's going to be a round character because we know a lot about her. Let's look at a character's effect on others. Mrs. Jones, remember Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones from Thank You, Ma'am? The boy wanted to say something else other than thank you, ma'am, to Mrs. Luella Bates Washington Jones, but he couldn't do so as he turned at the barren stoop and looked back at the large woman in the door. He barely managed to say thank you before she shut the door, and he never saw her again. Okay, so if we are thinking about the boy, would we consider him a protagonist or an antagonist? Wasn't he the one that caused the problem trying to steal her purse? So I think he'd be the antagonist. Now, dynamic or static with this one? Does he change throughout the story or does he stay the same? A lot of times protagonists stay the same. And you could say that he stayed the same because we don't know when he left her house if he was still going to be a bad person or not. But I could say he's static. But part of me would like to think that maybe he's going to be dynamic as well. And maybe he'll change because she taught him a lesson. That one's a little tricky. And then round or flat character, we don't know a whole lot about the boy. So he's going to be a flat character. And the last example is what the character says and the character's actions. So this is William. Remember the bully from All Summer in a Day? What are you looking at? Said William. Margot said nothing. Speak when you're spoken to. He gave her a shove, but she did not move. So that was pretty easy because we know William is an antagonist, causing the problems. He's pretty much a static character. He stays that way. And he's flat. We don't know a whole lot about him. So these are some examples of characterization and types of characters. We're going to look at some more. We'll practice some more. And then when we take a look at our mentor text next week, we are going to decide which category the characters in that story fall into. So what I want you to do now, you're finished with your notes for today. Go back into the Google Classroom and turn them in. The time that is remaining, number 1, I want you to go to Quizlet for STEMS List 5 back in the Google Classroom, and I want you to take the practice test and make a 100. If you don't make a 100, practice it again. Take the practice test again. Once you made 100 and you feel confident that you're going to do well on your quiz tomorrow, then you can either independently read your library book or you can get on Read Theory and work on some more of those quizzes. So make sure you study for your quiz tomorrow.